In this video, I'm going to take you along for a ride in a Zenith Cruzer. The reason I wanted to do this video is because previously I made a video titled Flying the Zenith Super Duty. And for my channel, it's one of my top videos as far as views go. And I figured it's probably popular because if people are interested in building a Zenith Super Duty, they want to know what it's like to fly in one. So if you are interested in building or owning or buying a Zenith Cruzer, I figured I'd take you along for a ride to kind of show you all the features of the airplane, to show you what it's like to fly one, and hopefully this video will give you a good idea of what it's like if you want to build your own cruiser. And hey, one more thing before we go. If you guys are interested in buying a cool Zenith t-shirt or any other airplane t-shirt, please go to aircrafttshirts.com, and if you want a cool airplane sticker, go to aircraftstickers.com. The little tiny bit of money I make by selling t-shirts and stickers, I do put right back into this channel, and it helps me buy things like microphones and cameras and tripods and things like that. So I appreciate every one of you that buys one. Now, let's get this Zenith airborne. Well, welcome aboard, everybody. The first thing I do is I turn my master switch on, and with the UL power, that will run the fuel pump here for about 10 seconds, just to make sure all the fuel lines are fully primed with fuel. I do have to wait until the dynon screen boots up because all my engine gauges are on the dynon. So when I start the engine, I want to check oil pressure. I need to make sure that's already up here.
Dynon Sky View.
As you can see, it only takes a second or so to boot up. Now, first thing I'll do is I'll put my feet on the brakes and put the parking brake on, so when I start the engine, I don't start to roll. I've already checked to make sure the forward latch, the main latch on the door are latched, and that's on both doors, so the doors are locked. The parking brake is on, dynon's booted, and I just put fuel level in here, so I'm going to put full, except that, and we are ready to fire the engine up. Hello?
Caution. Cylinder head temperature.
And I look for right about 1,000
Cylinder head
RPM
temperature.
after I start.
Cylinder head temperature. Cylinder head temperature.
And of course the dynon is telling me that the cylinder head temperature is cold right now. I can see the oil pressure is good, the oil temperature is low. I'll go ahead and flip on the beacon and the nav light. And then one of the things I'm going to do, I just flew earlier this morning when I landed, I forgot to put the flaps back up. So I'll just run the flaps all the way back up. And I usually just hold that for 4 or 5 seconds and then they're all the way up. All right, we're ready to roll. So I just push the parking brake in and we don't even have to add power. It'll start moving on its own. Taxiing the airplane is really easy because the rudder pedals have a steering rod directly to the nose wheel. There's a couple other airplanes in the pattern today using runway 27, so we'll taxi down that way.
Cylinder head temperature. Cylinder head temperature.
And the airplane's real easy to taxi. It doesn't want to really go one way or the other. It'll pretty much stay pretty straight with just minimal rudder input or rudder pedal input. I like this dynon screen because I can zoom in and out really easy. I can see where the other airplanes are at, well, as long as they have ADS-B. I can see one guy's on the downwind here, one guy's just holding short. And just a few minutes ago, there was a Zenith 601 that came in. He landed, taxied back, and took off again, but real nice polished 601 with, looks like it had red wheel pants and a red cowling, I think. All right, guys, I'll bring the airplane to a stop here. Again, I'll put the parking brake back on. Now, there's a couple things we do before we go. First thing here I'm going to do is set the altimeter field elevation here to 920 feet. I like to run the pump. This airplane has 2 fuel pumps, and pump number 1 is controlled by the engine ECU, so it'll turn the pump on when it needs it. But I like to turn on the second pump
and just let it run for a minute to make sure those fuel lines are primed and the pump works and the engine still runs. So I run that just for a few seconds. And then after that, we'll do our, I guess what you could call a mag check. This airplane doesn't have magnetos. It has a UL Power 350 IS engine, and it has 2 electronic ignitions, but we do it kind of the same. I'll bring the power up here with the throttle, and with the key, I'll check the right ignition and the left ignition. And on my airplane, I always get a 20 RPM drop during the check. So let's do it. That was 20. Here's this one. That's, yeah, 20. Back to both, and that's it. We bring the power back. This airplane has no carburetor heat or anything like that, so there's nothing else to check, really. It's pretty simple. This engine basically has one control, a throttle and a key. And I tell you, I do wish I brought my sunglasses with me. Since I have these new Rosen visors. All right, parking brakes off. We'll move up to the hold short line while this guy back taxis. So in this particular engine, the oil temperature needs to be 120 degrees before we go. Of course, everyone's going to be different, or every engine's going to be different. Your run-up procedures might be a little bit different. But you can see for the UL Power, it's pretty easy. All right, now before we go, I'll talk about the flaps here real quick. If you're familiar with like Cherokees and I think Cessnas and stuff, they usually have notches of flaps. Like you have one notch, 2 notch. On here, the way the flaps work on here, they're driven by an electric motor. So you basically have an infinite number of positions for the flaps. So I kind of go by seconds. So for takeoff, I go about 1, 2 seconds for flaps. I could just as easily do a 0 flap takeoff, but I always add just a bit of flaps.
2885 Bravo, departing runway 27 to the south, landing braces.
All right, we're ready to go. So we'll turn the strobes on, we'll turn the recognition lights on. It's on fuel pump 1, the brakes are off, and here we go. Price traffic 437 Mike Delta, back taxiing 27 at Price. Price traffic 437 Mike Delta, departing runway 27 to the south, Price. I'll have a little bit of back pressure in. We'll give it full power, and it'll be off the ground pretty quick. We have a pretty good crosswind from the south here too, so we'll cram into the wind and I can get the flaps up. A little bit bumpy today. Price traffic 437 Mike Delta, departing the pattern to the southwest, Price. So on a UL Power engine, 3,300 RPM is the max RPM. And I go to full throttle, I usually get about 2,900 or so on takeoff because I have the pitch on the prop set for cruise. But after I climb up about 1,000 feet, I'll bring the power back to 2,800. Right now it's at 2,740. Climbing out at 90 miles an hour. I'm doing still 600 feet a minute to climb. I think I'll head off here to the west a little bit. Well, it's a lot smoother up here at least. So you'll notice how nicely the airplane flies too. I have it trimmed out for the airspeed, pretty much. And because the air is smooth, I mean the airplane's very stable. I'm not even touching the stick and we're doing just fine here climbing out. Well, here we're coming up on 3,000 feet. I'll just go ahead and bring the power back to about 2,500 RPM. Now, if I was actually going on a cross country, I'd probably keep the power at 26 or 2,700. But here at 2,500 RPM, the airplane's nice and quiet, and we'll see what kind of speeds I get here. It's usually about indicating about 95 with about 100 on the true airspeed. So we'll see what it does. We'll just let it get trimmed out level here. So I'm right at 95 miles an hour indicated and 101 true. And one of the things you'll notice about a Zenith is they fly with a sort of a nose low attitude. And it takes a little while to get used to that. But when I first started flying, I would always bring the nose up to what looked like should be level, and I was always climbing. So it takes kind of a little few hours maybe to get used to that nose low attitude and to figure out kind of where to put the nose. The controls are pretty light. You can see it doesn't take much movement of the stick at all. I don't think they're excessively light. They feel good. Sometimes when you read articles in Kitplane's magazine or something, you have a test pilot fly an airplane and they're like, well, the ailerons take 14 pounds of pressure to move. I don't know how they tell it takes 14 pounds of pressure, but I don't think that's real useful information to anybody either. So all I can give you is in general terms.
Okay, we got your sight.
They're fairly light on the controls. The elevator's fairly light too. Probably a little bit lighter than the ailerons. The rudder is kind of stiff. It takes a little bit of pressure on the rudder to move the rudder. And that's because of the way that's designed with the nose gear. It's kind of hard to explain, but there's a little kind of a nylon block that centers the nose gear, and you have to overcome that, the little ramp on that block to move the rudder. So the rudder's a little bit stiffer. And it does take rudder in this airplane. In fact, most of the time, just to turn, you can just add a little bit of rudder, and you see the wings will go and it'll start to turn that way. I always start to turn with the rudder in. As I've said in other videos, the visibility on this airplane is pretty amazing too. You know, you can put your head out and see straight down. Let me show you in this camera here. I'll show you what I mean. See, I can put the camera, because these doors bubble out, I can put the camera almost outside the airplane and look straight down, which is pretty cool. Visibility all around is really good. And again, as you guys might know with the Zenith, because of the way the wings are designed, in a turn, you can see right over the top of the wings. So here's a turn to the right, looking right over the wing. You can see behind you, in front of you. Really has great visibility. It's one of the things I love about this airplane. You know, if you're looking for an airplane because you want to fly across the country all the time, then sure, Zenith might not be the airplane for you, but you might want an RV or something like that. But, you know, I notice even for me, 95% of my flying is doing just what I'm doing right now. I take off and I fly about 10 miles away and I just circle around and have some fun and sightsee. Or maybe I'll go to another airport and visit a buddy of mine or something, but the speeds I have with the Cruzer are just perfectly fine with me. I don't really ever find a need to go 200 miles an hour. I think this airplane's great for the occasional cross-country and a lot of local flying. Some people put the big balloon tires or the bush tires on the Cruzer, and it still makes a fantastic bush plane. It gets off the ground quick and lands short. The other thing I really love in this airplane too is the dynon screen. It's super sharp. No matter how bright the sun is, you can always read the screen. It really presents all the information really nicely and organized on the screen. If I haven't mentioned it yet, I'll build it. You know, you guys know I'm building a Super Duty. The panel will be all dynon. I'm really happy with the dynon in here, and I want to continue to use the dynon in the Super Duty. It's easy to install, it's easy to wire. All the components like the radio and the intercom and everything, you just plug right into each other and talk to each other. It's it's a really nice system. So today's just a really nice day to be out having fun. Now I guess I'll show you some slow flight in the airplane. I'll just bring the power back here.
673 short final 18 here.
I'm heading south right now. I'll start trimming it up. We're below 75 miles an hour, so I can put the flaps in. And you'll notice as you put flaps in, the nose will want to drop, so I trim up a little bit. I'll just add a little power to maintain the altitude here. Trim it up a little bit more. And you can see even this slow, it flies pretty much hands off too. It's a pretty stable airplane, I guess. There's some traffic out there at about 10 o'clock.
Enterprise traffic, Dr. 62, Juliet 3000.
Yeah, I do notice the slower you go, the tighter the controls get. So the ailerons are a little bit stiffer. It's just a lot more solid, it feels like, when you're going really slow. It's easy to do turns. I'm indicating right now 36 miles an hour. A little bit of rudder to keep it coordinated. Even the stalls are pretty gentle too. I'll go ahead and bring the power off here and just let it stall. There, that's about it. The nose just kind of drops a little bit. Let me get a little bit of speed here. All right, now watch, here's the stall. Bring the power off. Here, let me hold it back. All right, here's full back right here. That's the stall. I mean, the nose just kind of drops a little bit and it buffets. That's pretty much all you get. All right, get some power in, get the flaps up. Trim the nose down a little bit. Well, it was nice to get up in the air a little bit. I guess we'll head back to Price. I'm at 2,900 feet right now, and I have to be below 2,100 for Flint's airspace. So what I usually do is I trim it down a little bit. I don't bring the power back. I just get the little free airspeed out of it. Now, as far as speeds in the pattern here, I usually am at 75 miles an hour on downwind because that's the speed you can put the flaps down. And then base, I'm usually, I don't know, 65, and then final about 55. You can fly slower than that, definitely. But I have plenty of runway here, and I've never really needed to, you know, land short, but that's just the speeds I use. And what I'll usually do on downwind, here we're about 70 now, is I'll go like 1,000, 2,000, about 2 seconds of flaps. I'll trim the nose up just a little bit again. And then when I'm gonna beam the numbers, I pull the power all the way back to idle.
Traffic 8 Juliet, depart 27 remaining prices.
Add some more flaps. There's the numbers, we'll pull the power back. And go about 2 seconds more flaps. And we're probably just about at full flaps. There might be another little bit in there yet. And just let it come down about 500 feet a minute. Sometimes I gotta point the camera out here for you guys. There are some just mega mansions along this lake. I mean, these are like $15 million homes. Pretty cool to look at. Price traffic, 437 Mike Delta, left base 27 Price. Should probably pay attention. I'm a little bit slower than I wanted to be. And Price traffic, 437 Mike Delta, turning final for 27 at Price. Let's make sure we're at full flaps. At 59 right now. Final will be about 55. I can definitely tell there's a crosswind out of the south here. My speed is all over the place here. I'm getting bounced around. Looks like our windsock got blown over too. It's broke. Laying flat on the ground. Price traffic 437 Mike Delta is clear of the runway at Price.
And Price to traffic 8 Juliet. Left base 27.
Alright, so I'll put the brake on here. I'll turn the recognition lights off, the strobe lights off. And I always go back to pump 2 just to, make sure it still works. Give the pump 1 a break, I guess. I'll bring the flaps all the way up, take the brake off, and taxi on home. Now, when I bring to a stop, I turn the nav off, I'll turn the radio off, and then shut the engine off.
Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed going for a ride in the Blue Angels Cruzer. Hopefully this video gave you a little bit of an idea of what it's like to own and fly an airplane like this. That flight was about 30 or 35 minutes long, and it cost me about $6 in fuel. So when you own an airplane like this, the operating costs are fairly inexpensive. So thanks again for joining me today on this flight. I hope you liked the video. Please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Lots more flying videos coming, along with a lot more videos on the Super Duty.